having me. I'm so excited. Excuse my super casual attire. I'm on deadline, so I'm just like, you know what? Baggy sweatshirt at all times.
No apologies needed. We will jump right in. I don't want to keep you from
Oh my gosh, no, please
your
keep
mess.
me. Please keep me. Like, this is way more fun.
Well, we're talking about The Odds of You, which I was looking at. It's been out almost 2 months now.
Almost 2 months now.
That is
Yeah.
wild. That goes
It's
fast.
wild. It's absolutely wild. I can't believe it.
Well, let's start with having you tell us a little bit about your journey to this point to The Odds of You.
Yeah. So I got started. So actually my debut series was actually in Romantasy. It was called The Curse of Saints. It was a trilogy. And I started that in I think it was in like 2020. I was really inhaling fantasy. I was writing a rom-com that'll never see the light of day, to be completely honest with you. It was really bad, like really, really bad. And I had gone to the mountains with some friends and I was like, hey, don't let me work on this fantasy idea I have. I was all in on this other idea that I should not have been all in on. And thank God they did not listen, because I came away from that trip and like had The Curse of Saints mapped out in the trilogy. And that is the book that got me like my book deal. It enabled me to become a full-time author. And I did not actually plan to I didn't plan to stay in romantasy fully, but I didn't plan to switch genres anyways. I'm very much like a story writer. And The Odds of You came to me out of nowhere. I was on a plane on the way to Comic Con. It was one of my first events for when The Curse of Saints came out. So I was actually on tour for my first book. And I was not reading fantasy as I was debuting in fantasy. Like I read it as I was writing it, but as like right before I came out with the book, I was like, I need to stop because I'm like very nervous and it was my debut. And I just felt like, I was like, I can't, I'm overwhelmed. Anyways, and so I was inhaling contemporary romance, and on the plane, I was like mainlining really bad airline coffee, and I started this fun writing exercise because I wanted to write something that was like voicey and more contemporary and like a totally different vibe than was working on. I just turned in The Curse of Sins and gotten edits back, and I was waiting to dive into them. Anyway, so I wrote what became the first chapter of The Odds of You. And by the time I landed in San Diego, I was like, oh wow, this is a book. Like I must write this.
That's so fun. And I'm sure it's got to be I don't know, you tell me, is it kind of like exciting but also frustrating because you're like, I can't work on that yet?
Yes. Yeah. It was nice. Like it was a nice dangling carrot, right? Like to like put out and be like, okay, when I hit my word count goal for the day, I can like hop over and dabble in this project. But I really couldn't, until like Sins was locked in and we had gotten through edits and everything. There wasn't like a ton that I could do once I had the idea. I just kind of had to let it percolate. So it was definitely exciting, but it was definitely frustrating because I was like, oh man, I want to just like go on to the next thing.
So you got this idea, and for those who haven't read it, I don't think it's giving too much away that
Yeah.
it opens with a plane scene. And so
Yeah.
you do love a meet cute, and obviously you've just told us that where that kind of came from. But as you were diving into it and actually writing it, did the way that it kind of presented itself ever change, or was it pretty much there the whole time?
100%. So it definitely, I wrote the first act and I sent it to my agent as like a, hey, how do you feel about me doing contemporary romance? And hopefully it's good because here's the first act of a contemporary romance. And then I kept, working on it, and I ended up going back and sitting and plotting out more and revising. And I sent the revised first half to my agent after that. And she was like, I was missing the like Kate angst, and now it's here. And she was like, initially she was like, it was really cute. It was like, I loved the banter, but I definitely was like, oh, are you going to add trauma to it? Because you tend to do that in your work. And I was like, yep, here you go. So it definitely evolved as I was working on it. I also learned a lot about like my writing process for contemporary is just different. I do a 10 plot point outline anytime I start a project. And for fantasy, that's usually enough to get me to just like write and go. For contemporary, I needed to be a little more detailed because like plot point 5 was they fall in love. And I was like, okay, okay, but how? Like, what does that mean? So I definitely had to evolve the story as it went. And there were definitely some things that surprised me as I dove in to write it.
That's so fun. Sage, like she's such an interesting character, and I imagine you may have gotten this question a lot, but she's an author for people that
Yeah.
don't know, and she's struggling to write her sequel for her massively successful novel. So, did you pull any of that from like her experience?
Have I ever experienced writer's block in my life? Yes. So I always say, like, Sage is not me, but she is the first character of mine that I've given so much of myself to, like my neurodivergence, my bisexuality, my desire to reach the next level, often to my own detriment. And it's interesting because I thought I had writer's block when I wrote The Curse of Sins, but my agent jokes that I actually manifested it by writing The Odds of You and then turned around and got stuck on The Curse of Gods. And I was like, oh man. And I had kind of given myself a manual of how to get out of it because of writing The Odds of You. But I think what I poured most into the book was actually the adjustment in taking something that had once been catharsis and was is now my career. That doesn't get talked about a lot among creatives when you enter the space, and I think it's a really interesting shift, and the whole dynamic with your art and creation shifts. And I really wanted to take that kind of discomfort and blow it out and say, okay, let's look at this on a much grander scale than what I was experiencing.
That's so interesting. I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine what that has to like. That's got to be a very vulnerable feeling to be like, okay, I'm gonna put little sprinkles of myself into this character, and let's see how she does.
It is. It definitely is. I've gotten a lot better at like I know myself very well where like I don't read reviews like unless I'm tagged in something like I have Goodreads blocked. It's not for me. I've made that mistake before. Like I am very good at like kind of I don't want to say isolating myself, but filtering in what needs to come through. I do though remember telling my friends like before the book came out, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to like shift and kind of like don my armor in a new way because this is very personal. Sage is personal to me. It's difficult, anytime anyone critiques art, it feels personal, but it was a whole different level. I remember a trade review said she was what was it? What was the wording they used? It was something like she was hostile. Like they didn't understand why she was so hostile. And I thought it was an interesting word to use for someone who's like neurodivergence is labeled on the page. And I remember feeling like they were calling me hostile. Like I was like, oh my gosh. And I really was like, okay, I can't like I need to take a step back here because it's a different sort of experience now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I love Theo too, and he's going through such an interesting moment in his career because it's at the peak of what
Mm,
he's experienced as an actor so far. He's like everywhere, people want him everywhere, and he's just really experiencing like the most success.
yeah.
So that's happening in his professional life, while in his personal life, he's still going through something pretty heavy, pretty something he's never going to get over, and he's still
Mhm.
dealing with it. So what made you want to explore like the dichotomy of those two very different things going on?
Yeah. So I think when when Theo was coming to me, I guess when I was writing Theo, I was taken aback by just how many layers like started to reveal themselves with him. And I think it's really interesting. I really wanted to look at grief through the lens of it. And this isn't like a huge spoiler for anyone who hasn't read it, but I'm pretty sure I talk about it quite openly online. But Theo's older brother and mother passed away in a car accident. And it happens 7 to 9 years before we start the story of The Odds of You. And I really wanted to look at grief through the lens of how it never goes away, right? Like it's cyclical, it comes in waves, it never goes away. And you can be at the top of your game and your career. And one, you never know what someone else is going through. And two, you can be dealing with things that are so complicated and have really nuanced feelings about them. And I think that was really interesting to explore in Theo. The day I got my book deal, like my first ever book deal, I was in the middle of a summer of we'd lost like 4 family members in the span of 3 months. It was unreal. And I remember thinking like, I don't know how to hold having the best day of my life and the worst day of my life like at the same time. And I think that Theo was kind of a reflection of that time, but also that strange middle place that grief requires we occupy, right? Which is that like life continues on and yet grief stays with us, and it adds layers of complexity to everything.
I think that his journey is so interesting. I mean, I would just be echoing everything that you said, but it is such a like, I don't know, like a poignant experience of these things are happening, but I'm still like here too mentally.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
how do I do this? And just
Yeah.
like letting yourself trust someone else to kind of carry that with you. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
Absolutely. No, I think you're spot on. And I think that, for Theo from the outside looks like he has it all. And in so many ways he does. And yet he like Sage, constantly striving for the next level. But Theo's next level is the undefined success that his brother could have had his life not been cut short. And I think that is an immense sort of pressure when you're constantly looking at this X factor of what someone could have been or could have accomplished. And he feels a lot of responsibility to fill that role and make sure that, that his brother's legacy is sort of fulfilled through him. And it's a different sort of pressure, but similar but very different, that Sage feels, which is constantly like trying to prove herself and reach the next level, and prove to her family that she's made the right choice. And I love looking at love through characters who kind of trigger one another and mirror one another, because I think that's I love the mess of that, like how they can reflect these things back at each other and really kind of get into that mess because they can recognize it in one another.
well, and you just kind of touched on it a little bit, but like Sage is going through her own experience, like with her family and feeling
Mm.
not really seen, definitely not supported. She's in the midst of her own coming out of her success, but also just like dealing with these very difficult dynamics. So, why did you want to explore something that may be painful and have that be part of her story?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people feel this desire to carve out their own path and then feel very unsteady on it. I'm very fortunate to have, a family that cheers me on in my creative endeavors and is very supportive and is like, yes, go for it. That's not the case for several creatives. And I think that really looking at that and looking at like what is it like, especially when you're an overachiever and you're a perfectionist and you're an eldest daughter, like what is it like to look at a path and say, no, I'm not doing that. And try to navigate and stay true to it when you're scared, when people are still telling you it's not right. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, is this idea of, branching out, trying something new, being scared, and then also not really being able to show that fear because maybe they don't have the support that they need.
Well, I think that her like relationship with her brother is so interesting too, because it's like
Yeah.
different experiences, different lived experiences, and how do you, it's just such a wrestling match. Like, I love this person, they
Yeah.
just don't get it, and what
Yeah.
do I do with that?
I love looking at sibling dynamics. I'm the middle child. I have an older brother and a younger sister, and I just absolutely like I love my siblings more than anything in the world. And I think it's so like there's something so interesting to me about a sibling. You know what I mean? I'm like, I love you and I've known you my entire life. And also sometimes I don't like you, but I love you. Like, but you are one of my favorite people. And it's a very interesting dynamic. And there's so many things that your siblings understand at a core level that like no one else is going to get, and I think like I love that Noah and Sage, like they understand their parents stuff like in a way that, and even though they experience it differently. And then the other thing that I think is so interesting is that when you like get older, your relationships with your siblings kind of have to change, but you're kind of also still stuck in the like, no, 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 this is our dynamic. What are you talking about? And I know like I think that my brother is very much, an older brother, and he like wants to protect me and wants to guide me, and I think he would never ever admit it, but I think sometimes it's it's an adjustment for him when he can't do that, or when he's not like doesn't have the experience. And it's how I feel with my little sister, like I'll go in and try to give her advice and she's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, yes, but to me you are still 10 years old and I must protect you from the world. And so I really think that that's an interesting dynamic to look at, and it causes a lot of friction as well. I think parents pit siblings against each other all the time, and it causes a lot of angst.
Well, you definitely, as the reader, can feel that on the page. So good job to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I feel like I would just be doing a disservice if we didn't touch on the setting because the majority of the book takes place in the Highlands of Scotland, and it's just
Yes.
so fun. So like, what was it like writing that? What made you decide to go there? Like, tell me a little bit about
Yes.
that.
So my best friend and I went there in 2019, and we actually got a Scott's cheap flights deal to Ireland. And we were really obsessed with Outlander. We were like really in our Outlander era. And so she was like, what if we just get another flight and fly to Scotland instead? And so we were like, okay, perfect, let's do this. And my best friend is a planner. Like she's like spreadsheet galore anytime we travel, which is amazing. And she put together like a sample itinerary. And one of the stops was the Isle of Skye. And I was not familiar with the Isle of Skye. And so I was just like, yep, let's do it. It looks beautiful. And we wanted to drive through the Highlands. And so when it came time to sit and think about like Sage's story, and I really wanted her to escape, I wanted the book to have like a Notting Hill meets the holiday sort of vibe, and then also sprinkle in like all the angst of a Noah Kahn album, you know? And I was like, okay, well, if I'm kind of following that blueprint, where would Sage go? And I was thinking, well, if it were me, I would go back to the Isle of Skye. Like I would immediately just book a flight and go there. And it's something that I've always wanted to go back and just like write there. I would not be able to do it by myself though. I'm too much of an extrovert. I'd be like crawling out of my skin. But yeah, and I wanted it to be somewhere I had been before because I wanted, I obviously did a bunch of research because it has been a while since I've been there, but it's just such a beautiful place. It's magical. There was so much to pull from my trip with my best friend. Like that scene where Sage is driving to her cottage, and like, the truck is coming at her and she's been upgraded to the SUV. Like all of that is straight from our trip archive. So
Yeah,
yeah.
we did a Scottish road trip in 2024,
Oh,
and I'm with you. Like when I think about immediately the place I would go back, it's there. Like
it's
it's otherworldly.
It is. It's stunning. It is so stunning. And like I mean, I've seen some truly beautiful sights, and nothing compares to that. Like
I
the way it like stole my breath. We hiked up to Old Man's Store, and I was just like, what? How does this exist?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so fun. I love that it was just so immersive. I think it was just added just a little bit more magic to the story.
Thank you. Thank you. I spent so much time on like Google satellite view, like just walking down the streets of Fortree to be like, okay. And like some places like the tavern that they're in is not real. It's not the actual tavern that's there. But there were pieces that I was like, I need to make sure. And I remember getting into it, not into it, but going back and forth with my copy editor, who was like, are you sure that this is how the parking lot is? And I was like, I am so sure. And I have a Google map image to show you if you need me to like prove it. And there was just like so much, like I did a lot of research on what the emergency room looked like, and also like what would the co-op grocery store, and what would be available around this time. And yeah, it was quite a process.
So what made you choose to tell the story from like third person limited point of view?
I love this question. Thank you for asking this. So first of all, I did not realize that this is such a hot topic, until I got into contemporary romance, and I was like, oh wow, like I don't know what it is. Like I don't have like I let me answer it this way. I like third person limited better. I'm better at writing it, and I like it better when I'm reading. I don't dislike first person. I've read a lot of first person books that I absolutely adore. I have tried to write first person, and I'm not very good at it, and I'm keep trying. So maybe one day we'll get something from me that'll be first person. But for this, I had my favorite book of all time is Red, White, and Royal Blue, and that book is a masterclass in a close third person. And I wanted to write something that accomplished what that book did from a craft perspective in terms of the point of view. I was like, wow, I don't know that I've ever read a third person limited where I felt like I was so much in the character's head. And then for The Odds of You, when I sat down to do it, I think the thing about third person limited is it allows you to get into a character's head, but you can still be cinematic. And when we're in a location like the Isle of Skye, there's there's setting to be done, and there's more like there's a rhythm to the prose, I guess I would say. And you can't really do that in first person in the same way you can do it in third person limited, in my experience. I just tried to do it again for my next contemporary. I rewrote a scene in first person. So I was like, maybe I'm just gonna rewrite the whole thing in first person. And I was like, it's not cinematic enough. Like I can't, it's you're I was too close to the characters and the way I wanted to write it. So that's how I ended up at third. But I had no idea that like apparently first is very, very popular in romance. And I was like, which this sounds bad. It sounds like I don't know anything about my craft, but I was just like, I love this. And then, I'm going to do this.
No, I think that it's easy when you're reading to not even think about it. Like you're just
Yeah.
like, I love this, and that's it. So I don't think that that is crazy that you don't know that you didn't
Yeah.
realize it. It's just
Yeah.
preferential.
Yeah, yeah, it was not a it's funny because like I've been way more intentional about it now, like when sitting down and really diving into like what point of view would serve the story best and blah blah blah. But when I started Oz, I was just like, it was just the point of view I was going to write it. Like I was like, yep, this is what I'm doing. And then I was like, oh, now looking back on it, I realized there was a lot of intentionality there, but it was until it became like a discussion and I was like, oh, like I need to actually think about this. But it very much was like, I mean, not that I didn't think about it, but it was very much like it was what I liked to read. It was the vibe I was going for. And it was what to me served the story best.
Well, I thought it was really fun. I mean, as a person who does really enjoy first person and multiple
Yeah.
POVs, I thought it was so fantastic. So
Thank you.
I don't
Thank
know if that
you.
matters, but there
I mean,
it
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I think that also one of the things I like about third, because I went through this when I wrote the Curse of Saints. The first half of it was actually all in first person, and it was only an Aya's point of view. And then I realized that I could not sit in Aya's head for that long. Like I was just like, I can't. This is too much for me, and it needed multiple points of view. And I'm now looking back at the entire trilogy, cannot imagine that story being in first person just because of the weight of some of what is shared. And that's not to say that you can't do that in first person. That's to say that I don't know that I would have been able to sit in that for as long as I would have had to. And I like third person to help show a mirror to the reader in a way that I think maybe doesn't feel as like, how do I want to say this? It like sometimes I feel like people can receive things better, right? If they're not immediately like in the point of view. And so for a book like The Curse of Saints, where there was like some really heavy topics and some really, maybe I don't want to say not triggering in terms of like triggering trauma, but like frustrating. I like to cause frustration with my characters. And usually when I do it, it's because you might be seeing something of yourself in the character. And I think that I have more room to do that in third and like get a little more buy-in, I guess.
No, that definitely
I'm
makes
rambling.
no, no, no. It makes total sense. I think that that's
Yeah.
a really interesting take on it. Like
Yeah.
you might be able to experience it in a completely different way. So
Yeah,
if
totally.
if readers had to take one thing only away from this story, what would you want that to be?
I love this question. I think it would be the dedication, honestly, which is that you're enough just as you are. I wrote it, for those who feel like they have two big hearts and two fast minds. And I really, really hope that when readers walk away from it, that they feel like they're enough.
I love that. It's so such
Thank
it
you.
seems like such a simple thought, but it's really
Yeah.
not. Like we forget that all the time.
Yeah, yeah, we do. And I think, um, I I have been blown away by the reaction to the book. Like I knew it was special to me and I knew it was personal to me, but the number of readers who have been in my DMs or told me aside at events to say that they've never seen themselves on the page like this or their inner thoughts like represented like this has been really, really moving. And I think that I it makes it just so like overwhelming in a good way for me, because that's exactly what I wanted, right? Like that's the takeaway, is that even with all of the chatter in our heads and our, like, big emotions and all of that, like we still deserve love and we don't have to change for it. And to hear so many readers feel seen and then love the love story has just been awesome.
Yeah, that's so special. It's got to just feel like something completely different than you've experienced before, I'm sure.
A
Just the
100%. Oh my God.
reward.
Yes. Yes. The number of times I cry easily. So it's not shocking that I've cried about it. But the number of times I got like emotional about it today, twice. And I was just like, I can't, my poor tear ducts. Like,
This is why I can't read reviews.
yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, I so appreciate these messages, but I need to stop crying.
Well, what is one piece of advice you would have, kind of pivoting here, but one piece of advice you would have for writers and aspiring authors?
Oh my gosh. I was going to say learn about point of view, but not that. I would say, I, you know, let it be bad. Like that's the thing that I think that every writer needs to hear, especially if they're just starting out. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make something perfect, and it has to exist for us to improve it. And so many people get stuck trying to, and I've been guilty of this myself, trying to make it something perfect and like polished, but we never actually get to the finish line to polish it. And so I think giving yourself permission to just let it be bad. Finishing the book is actually the hardest part. Like that is the hard, like editing, it's hard, but you can polish and there's, resources and all of that. But telling the story from start to finish and getting that down on the page, like if you can do that, you're golden. And I think let it be bad.
I love that. I love what you said. It has to exist to improve. That's so,
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, I love that.
Thank you. Someone told me once, and I wish I could remember who it was because it was such a profound piece of advice, but they said the first draft is you telling yourself the story. And I was like, oh my, you're right. That is what that is.
I'm
And so
learning
that,
it too.
right? Exactly. And I'm like, oh yeah, that takes so much of the pressure off, because if I can like tell myself the story, then I have something to work with.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Well, you've mentioned it here and there, but I don't know how much you can tell us about what you're working on now and what that.
Ugh, I I don't know that I'm allowed to tell y'all anything. I can tell you, here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that I am currently editing my next contemporary. And that will be out in 2027. So there's another contemporary coming from me. It'll be out in 2027. I am also drafting the first book of a new romantasy duology, which has not actually been announced, but I've been talking about it anyways, and I haven't gotten in trouble yet. So I'm going to keep talking about it.
Yeah, I got to
And
put
that will
that
be
out
coming
there.
out. Right, exactly. And that will be coming out after the contemporary. So I am, those are the two things that I am allowed to, I think, at least say that I'm working on, but I can't tell you anything about what they are, which makes me so sad because I'm like, you know what I've been doing, Sky? It's so bad. I've been doing it at like live events where there's like not a recorded, like, I've been practicing my pitches for them there because I'm like, no one will know. Well, now I've told them myself, but like, it's fine.
Well, go ahead and pitch us then. No.
Could you imagine? I almost did this the other day it was like a closed Zoom, like event. And I was like, oh, like it's not being recorded. Like I can do it. And I completely forgot my UK publicist was on the call. And I was like, let me not do this. I mean, she would have been totally fine. Like she would have been like, that was hilarious. But I was like, I should probably behave.
Well, I'm excited. I mean, that feels like it's so far away, but we literally just talked about how this book has already been out for almost 2 months, and it feels like yesterday.
Right?
So it'll
I
be here before we
know.
know it, and I
It
hope that
will.
maybe you'll come back.
Yes, I would love to. I would love to. I will tell you what it's about, Sky. I will do it off of the camera.
Okay. Well, we have each other's direct stuff, so I'm
Yes.
waiting. I'm looking at the clock for it.
Amazing. Amazing.
Well, thank you so much. And everyone, if you haven't read The Odds of You yet, it is available now, and you should absolutely go pick it up. But
Yes, it has these like really pretty edges too.
oh my, I don't have that.
You have the, I think you have the, because you have the advanced reader
Oh
copy,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
pretty. Look
Right?
at that. I didn't
It
even
like
know that was like,
continues. Yeah.
wow. I mean, who
I
wouldn't want
know.
that?
Thank you. I'm obsessed.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope that you have the best night.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
It was. Bye, everyone.